Meet the Brady Bunch, nicknamed for playing under the watchful eye of coach David Brady. The 15 boys are from local soccer clubs as well as Armidale and Taree. They'll travel to Denmark to compete against teams from more than 40 countries for the Dana Cup. During a 2.5-week tour, they'll play against England's Tottenham Hotspur and Arsenal teams, as well as the best from Italy, Germany and Brazil. At an indoor training session today, some team members were a little apprehensive at their prospects.
I think we'll do pretty well. Okay, yeah. I've never been overseas and I'd really like to play against teams that I've never played before, against Arsenal and their youth team and teams like that. Our team's okay and we should go all right. Should do pretty well.
Back on the field, they played like Spitfires. Coach David Brady was more confident.
I think this team will go very well overseas. We've recently played the under-16 New South Wales team, which is reputedly the best team in Australia, a junior team that is, and we held them to a 2-2 draw and in fact should have won that game. So I think that this team will play very well when they go overseas. They're a good group of lads. They play very well, they're sharp, they want it, and I expect total success from them.
The Congress wound up today after 2 days of hectic argument and discussion. A list of recommendations was drawn up and presented to the Hunter Academy of Sport. The proposals included a move to have sport become an official part of the entire school syllabus, to have it become a formally assessed subject, to give each school a head sport teacher, and to improve teacher training in the field of sport. The Academy intends passing them on to the New South Wales Government and is confident of getting a positive response.
Both the New South Wales Minister for Education and the New South Wales Minister for Sport have said that they will take these or the recommendations from this Congress to the New South Wales Government for consideration, and we're confident that something positive will really come out of it.
Still, for the plans to come to fruition, authorities admit a total rethink of the nature of sport will be required.
Sport is there, and it's sort of not a real part of the curriculum like maths or science or English is, and I think that's one of the main things that's come out of the conference is that we want sport to be considered as the other parts of the curriculum are.
First up, it was Peter Johnson who left the field flat on his back during the Eastern Suburbs game after sustaining a serious ankle problem. And after only 5 minutes of play against the Rabbitohs, his front row partner Mark Sargent was also carried off with an ankle injury after South's fullback Rod Maben just rolled on it in the process of completing the tackle. No break, but it's hard to detect where the ankle joint is because of the amount of swelling. And a specialist appointment in Sydney tomorrow will confirm ligament damage and a lengthy time on the sideline.
We're still in the run for the semis, Mike, and if we make them now, I'll be sort of lucky to be back by then. I would think. They were quite optimistic at the hospital last night. They put it at about 4 weeks, but that's subject to the specialist having a look at it tomorrow morning.
Big Sarge has no doubts that the club's shortage of props will be adequately covered.
Jono's just about ready to come back, so hopefully he'll be right for next week. But, you know, we've got some fairly strong backup with blokes who can play front row, Butts and Jono, James Goulding and so forth. So I don't think, if any of those guys are calling, I don't think they'll let anyone down.
The Knights struggled to get on top of South, and the Rabbitohs bombed at least 2 tries, with Darren McCarthy throwing a shocking pass to Manoa Thompson, and then Steve Maven dropping the ball over the line after one of the most sensational moves this year. With tries to Boyd, Marquette and this one by Doyle, the Knights were able to snatch the win and keep their semi-hopes alive.
The one-man service being considered by Lake Macquarie Council is already operating in Coffs Harbour, Wollongong and Tweed Heads. It's proposed that the number of men on garbage runs will be cut in half, from 42 to 21, saving the council around $600,000 a year. Negotiations between the Municipal Employees Union and the council are underway, with council promising no retrenchments.
The committee has guaranteed to the men that there will be no retrenchments, that those persons displaced from the garbage service would be absorbed elsewhere in the workforce.
The union, though, believes that with the one-man system, service to the aged and invalid will suffer. As well, garbages in hard-to-get-to areas will be left uncollected. Council, though, says those problems will be overcome before the system is introduced.
We realise that there are problems out there that they can't be serviced by the one-man function, and it's something we will investigate, obviously, and continue to provide the service to them. It may mean that we could have to operate, say, with 2 men on the vehicle.
Although it looks likely the service will be operating in Lake Macquarie by as early as next year, at $170,000 a garbage truck, the one-man transition won't come cheaply. All up, around $3.25 million. Jodie McKay for NBN News.
In drought-susceptible countries like Australia, water can be worth its weight in gold.
Well, I think if you haven't got water, you haven't got life. I think it's the most important thing on the land.
Farmers spend thousands of dollars building dams to store water, but figures show up to 50% of those dams in the Hunter are failures.
There's too much water runs down the creek, so to speak.
Dams often seep or erode due to porous soil types, but plastics manufacturer Cromford, working with the Soil Conservation Service, say they've got answers to seal the leak.
It's a very simple method that they're using here, and very often the simple methods are the best methods. So if they keep it simple, it'll work.
The dam's base is lined with industrial plastic, like that used under concrete slabs, and then simply covered with soil. It's a type of insulation to keep the water in. The new base means farmers can now build dams in almost any soil type and feel more confident that expensive ventures into water resources should be leak-proof. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Last night saw the climax of the region's hotshot competition, a basketball shootout between the best of our under-12 players. Competition was stiff, and with last-minute jitters and a large audience, including their Falcon team heroes, the adrenaline was pumping. The last contestant, 10-year-old Cameron Ford, emerged the victor with only a 1-point lead over Jason Dwyer. In third place, Bernadette Baker, who edged out Travis Helmut in a nail-biting playoff. Cameron was refreshingly modest about his win.
So how do you feel after winning so well?
It feels wonderful. I never thought I could make it.
Any ambitions to be in the NBL one day?
Yes, I do.
So you've got plans?
Yes, I have.
Which team?
Falcons.
Of course.
Falcons coach Ken Cole knows talent when he sees it and may one day help Cameron to fulfil that ambition.
One day one of those players will play for us and that'd be great.
Norths, Manly, Wests, Penrith, Parramatta, Brisbane, Balmain. That's the dawning prospect for the Newcastle Knights in their remaining minor round matches of this year's Winfield Cup. On 19 points and one outside the 5, the clash with the Bears is of vital importance.
You know, we haven't got there either by being lucky, and we've certainly played some pretty good football too over the last couple of weeks, and you know, this is going to be a very hard, solid affair.
And a change of tactics for Alan McMahon this weekend as they head to the Narrabeen Fitness Centre tomorrow, not to train but to relax.
Yeah, we're going to go to Narrabeen and stay there overnight leading into the game. The wide open spaces, it gets away from the, you know, from the motel type of lifts, and you know, we just feel with the grass under the boys' feet, they prefer it that way, and possibly so do we.
Two changes to the side that beat South last weekend. Out is Mark Sargent through injury. He's replaced by Peter Johnston. And Marty Creaker has been relegated to reserve grade, and in comes Glenn Miller. The loss of Sargent is a huge blow to the Knights, but McMahon is confident the forwards will still do the job.
They've just said everyone's got to provide that little bit more, to make up for the loss of Mark, and they'll do that.
Once the Pigeons are liberated at around 7:30am on Sunday morning, they face the daunting prospect of a 463-kilometre flight home to a cosy loft and a good feed. 200 birds from all states of Australia will take part, with a big contingent from Victoria and South Australia, chasing the big dollars on offer. And it's not just the first prize that the winner could collect.
If one come out in front, he could earn up to $40,000 if he was pooled all the way. Every bet was in the race, he could take 40.
Last year, 46 birds crossed the line together in just over 8 hours, and organisers are hoping that conditions will be ideal for the nation's richest pigeon race this year. Birds are expected at the Macquarie loft at Redhead around 4 o'clock on Sunday.
It's 12 and 18 degrees. This is 2KO on a super music weekend.
Vandals scaled a security fence around the heliport late last night. Police took fingerprints from both aircraft. The NBN helicopter had been broken into. The window of the other was shattered. The aircraft's controls had been tampered with, and pilot Clive Lipscomb fears the engine too may have been violated.
I don't think that people really understand, especially the idiots that come here and do this, I really don't think they understand the full implications of what they're doing. It's not like a motor car. There's just too many things that are very critical on a helicopter.
Mr Lipscomb says the vandals may not be aware they've broken federal aviation laws and could face stiff penalties. For the chopper's owners, the damage bill will top $10,000. Both helicopters will undergo extensive airworthiness checks. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The Cheetahs played attacking football all night and were rewarded with a good try when Honorary got the ball to Russell, on to Budden, and then Tony Pigeon joined the move. He was able to get a brilliant pass on to Hanlon, back to Russell, who threw the dummy, and he was able to cross for a big four-pointer. At National Park netball courts today, BHP Newcastle defeated the very physical Sutherland team 49-42. It was a big turnaround for Newcastle, as the last time they met the Sydney team triumphed to the tune of 42-24. Centre Jenny Donaldson had a superb game for BHP Newcastle as she continually drove her team into attack and she defended stoutly. Wing defence Jenny Rouse also was impressive, keeping the much-vaunted Sutherland attack in check. After shooting poorly in the first term, Newcastle picked up the tempo to run out winners by 7 goals. Howard Tredenick signalled his intention from the outset with a solid tackle on Enio Mawson, and Steve Knight put the ledger square with an overzealous hit on Phillips. Australs just couldn't find the back of the net as Kristevski, Jones and Bailey combined, but the ball sailed over the top. Bobby Namoff and Robbie Ironside also worked together, but again the same result. The one opportunity that Warringah had in the first half materialised. Robert de Segley took the ball down the right and flicked a pass inside, where captain coach Glenn Sterry was in hand to beat Australs' Craig Carter. In the second half, Namoff went tantalisingly close, but his shot went across the face, and then Namoff was involved again, but Kristevski headed it straight to the keeper. Sterry was in the action once again, but couldn't beat Carter after a big run, and Warringah were unlucky not to go 2 up when Tony Versey did Carter all ends up, but a weak shot saw it cleared by Tredenick. Australs had one last crack at an equaliser, but Militek's cross saw Namoff with a chance, but again the defence held, and Warringah were home 1-0.
The state of the highway was brought to Mr Brown's attention by the recent NBN Drive Alive special. The program pointed out serious black spots in the need for motorists to drive accordingly to survive the poorly designed and maintained coastal highway. $300 million is to be spent on the link over the next 3 years, which should include road widening, straightening and bypasses of traffic bottleneck areas. At a news conference prior to his departure from Newcastle, Mr Brown disagreed with the opinion of State Coroner Kevin Waller that the road should be upgraded to a full dual carriageway after last year's horrific bus crashes.
Kevin Waller is no more a traffic engineer than I am. I take expert advice. He would be well advised to do the same thing.
Mr Brown will inspect the highway between here and Port Macquarie today.
After 10 days of evidence and more than 50 witnesses, counsel for each of the parties involved gave their concluding addresses to the inquest today. First on the floor, Paul Kerr, with stinging allegations of faulty construction and council negligence. Mr Kerr is representing the family of one of the victims, Miriam Duffy, and 12 of the injured. He said a critical section of the roof truss was omitted from the Workers' Club, causing the whole of the western wall to be unstable. As to Newcastle City Council's involvement, Council purported to make a full inspection of the whole building in July 1988. The building was approved as structurally adequate, but he said that approval was invalid and issued without proper inspection. Neither the club nor Council could avoid its responsibilities, he said. There was criticism too for Council over the Hamilton deaths. Mr Kerr said 3 people were killed because of awning collapse. He said they fell as a consequence of Council directing that awning supports be removed. Legal counsel for the Workers' Club, Simon Harbin, said the question of the failure mechanism of the building should be left to another place and time. He said he'd strongly reject any criticisms levelled at the club in terms of construction or design. As for Mr Harbin's other interest, the Kent Hotel, he agreed the original awnings could have acted to alter events on December 28. Their removal was ordered for safety reasons by that famed body, the Council. Newcastle Council has not been legally represented in this inquest. Today, Town Clerk Barry Lewis said on the best legal advice, it was considered they should keep a low profile. From the Fire Brigade Union today, regret that the controversial debriefing document was leaked to the press, but conviction that the criticisms revealed in that document have some factual basis. The intent was not spiteful, but to improve rescue services, with the Fire Brigade used to its best advantage. This historic inquest is now drawing to a close. Tomorrow, the coroner will hand down his findings on the first Australian earthquake to claim human lives. Leslie Robinson for NBN News.
Max Pike of Hawk's Nest has fished and dived along the east coast from Manly to Cooktown over the past 30 years, and he's never seen anything like it. A diner mightn't bat an eyelid if served this mysterious morsel, but to an experienced eye, it's something out of the ordinary.
I noticed this lobster, but he was a type of pinky red colour, and I thought it was
little plastic kid's toy, and I picked it up. It was right near the water, and when I picked it up it started wriggling, and I said, hell, I've seen a lot of lobsters, but takes the cake, you know. I just have never seen anything like it in my life before, you know, so it's really amazing, you know, that the things you do find in the ocean at times, you know.
Local lobsters are green, their eyes protrude on stalks. This confusing crustacean has a more powerful tail and a rugged box-like body with peculiar markings. Max has one theory.
I reckon about out on the continental shelf, about probably 500 or 600 feet or more, maybe 1,000 feet down, and they must be down there. But this bloke must have got a bit sick, or the heavy seas washed him in and he couldn't find his way back out again, so he hopped on the shore and had a look around, see what was going on, you know.
Lobsters are known to migrate over hundreds of kilometres underwater. Marine biologists at the Australian Museum in Sydney will test their expertise to identify this creature.
Emotions were running high at the first of the two meetings today, attended by more than 200 staff of the General Sub-Branch of the Health and Research Employees Association. It was highly critical of the hospital management.
I brought a social issue up and they didn't like it. None of them liked it. They wanted to hide it.
Such outbursts were often punctuated with calls of charge them and sack them.
I just think it's disgusting, that's all. The whole issue is disgusting. To put people at risk, any sort of risk is bad, you know, but to cover up.
Well, I'd like to see a whole new lot there. I think you just can't put the blame on Mr Batts. I think these previous ones before them too.
I'd like to see the people responsible held accountable for it anyway.
In what form?
Well, sacked, I suppose.
Eventually, after more than an hour of discussion, their grievances went to a vote.
Call for a full and thorough independent public inquiry and the just and adequate action be taken to any persons found to be involved in this diabolical cover-up. And a vote of no confidence in the administration of the Royal Newcastle Hospital and the immediate stand-down of our safety officer.
That recommendation was passed with overwhelming support, as was another worded on very similar lines on the second meeting this afternoon of the union's clerical branch.
You want a full and proper inquiry into this to find out exactly who covered it up and why they covered it up.
And when you find the people who have covered it up, what do you want done with them?
One, that would be up to the area health service of this area, and I'm sure that Dr Owen James should take appropriate action as what he seems fit.
Copies of both resolutions were placed in the hands of Hunter Area Health Service Chief Executive Dr Owen James. Late this afternoon, Dr James told NBN he was concerned by the obvious antagonism between staff and management at the Royal. He refused to comment on the no-confidence vote or consider suspending any employee over the affair. However, he did say moves were being made to have an occupational health expert do a full report on the Royal's asbestos problem. As well, a team of asbestos removalists are to begin work in 2 weeks, clearing asbestos which is exposed and a severe health risk. But for some employees, such actions brought little joy. Among the more emotive members at today's meeting were the people who work in the boiler room. That's because they say they've been exposed to asbestos more than anyone. In fact, they say they still are. Despite the hospital management's claims that it's sealed off the worst areas, tunnels like this one, which was referred to in John Flint's report as being the worst possible area for asbestos contamination, are still clearly exposed.